Welcome to Module 1, Activity 3. Now that you've watched the videos of Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris, the videos that I have recorded for Activity 1 and 2, along with the upstairs and downstairs brain, let's dive into the concept known as polyvictimization. Polyvictimization is having experienced multiple victimizations, such as sexual abuse, physical abuse, bullying, and exposure to family violence. It's the idea, poly, meaning multiple, that there are multiple times that a child has experienced trauma or has been victimized. This is the start of Activity 3, because we are going to dive into how this impacts the brain, but also how we may be able to understand this impact on the brain when we're using two different types of questionnaires: the Adverse Childhood Experiences Questionnaire and the Juvenile Victimization Questionnaire. So as we have already learned, when stress or trauma happens, it does impact the brain. What I think is the most interesting and the thing that I've learned the most about as I've done this work in trauma-informed practice is that we once believed that experiences children had about the age of 2 and after are the only experiences that truly impact the rest of their life. That is untrue. Research has shown that before birth, or what's called womb memory, about the 5th or 6th month that a child is in a mother's stomach, they start to have womb memory. Their brain starts to take in information and hold it in there. We will not be able as humans to say, this is an experience I had when I was in the womb. But our body knows the score. Our body remembers what happens starting in about the 5th or 6th month of what's called womb memory. Many of us also cannot pull out specific examples of experiences before the age of 2. We may have been told of experiences or interactions or seen pictures and created a memory, but many humans are not able to pull out a direct memory before the age of 2, which is known as childhood amnesia. However, this is implicit memory. It is still being held in our brain and in our memory. It is still impacting who we are. And then after 2 is the explicit memories, and those are the memories that many of us can pull out and tell stories about from our childhood. One of the books that I use for a course when I've taught this before talks about an experience of a foster girl. This girl had been in multiple foster homes, and she had just entered a new foster home. She was about 11 or 12, and her new foster mother decided to have a girls' spa day and take her to get her nails done. This was the first time this girl had remembered ever being in a nail salon. But as soon as she entered the nail salon, she became erratic. She could not stop crying. Her body just wanted out of that nail salon. She couldn't tell her foster mother why, but she knew she had to get out. So, of course, the foster mother and the girl left the nail salon. Through some research and some conversations with the social worker and the caseworker, it was found in her file that, as a young infant and toddler, she was sexually molested in a nail salon where her mother had worked. She could not tell the caseworker or her foster mother about the experience, but this is a definite example of how the body remembers. And what they came to find out is that it was the smell. So if you've ever been in a nail salon, you know that smell that is often around acrylic nails and the nail polish and just kind of those chemically smells. Those set her brain into survival mode, into fight, flight, and freeze. So it is a good example of sometimes the children and students we work with cannot tell you why something gives them a response, but it is our job to make sure that we honor that response. And so some of the ways that we can go about this is to understand one of the things that many of you probably have heard of is called the adverse childhood experiences. There's a reading during this activity that I'm going to invite you to take a look at and to read and to understand. But essentially, it is a questionnaire that asks what happened before the age of 18 in a child's life. As a caveat, this should never be used as an evaluative or assessment tool for elementary, middle school, or high school students, but it provides us some understandings. It provides us some guidance on maybe how to interact in a trauma-informed way. But on the left-hand side of the screen, it talks about there are categories that the questionnaire talks about. It talks about abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. The higher your ACE score, the more likely you will have some of these adverse results with behavior and physical or mental health. Now we can look at it and say about half, right? It's 46, 49, 51, always kind of around 50%, that if you have 4 or more ACE scores, you are more likely to have some of the behaviors or physical and mental health that is depicted on the right-hand side of the screen. However, it's also important to look at this from an asset-based mindset. Just because there's about 49% who do end up having behavior or physical or mental health consequences, that means 51% of children have been raised and interacted in loving relationships in classrooms with trauma-informed care that have created resiliency, that have gone against what statistics say, and they do not have those behavior, physical, or mental health consequences that are often seen. So yes, it is a large number that show that if you have a high ACE score, you will have behavior, physical, and mental health of something on the right-hand side. But that also means that there's a pretty high percentage that you won't. When we as educators, the change makers, the social workers, the nurses, the people who interact in the lives of students can make that change through loving relationships. The other questionnaire, you're going to watch this video, but the other questionnaire that is often ignored and not often talked about is called the Juvenile Victimization Questionnaire. And so you can, I'm not going to read this to you what's on the screen. Please review these PowerPoint slides. And there's also a reading about the connected to poly-victimization, which we talked about at the beginning of this activity, but also the JVQ. The JVQ is something that I know is often not discussed in relation to the ACEs score, but it is something to think about, especially when we want to really understand the holistic nature of the students that we're working with. This concludes Module 1, Activity 1, 2, and 3. Please make sure that you not only watch the videos I am providing here, but the videos that are also linked and throughout the PowerPoint deck. And please make sure to also read the articles that are provided. All of that fits together to provide a solid foundation on what trauma is and the impacts of trauma in the lives of the children and students that we work with.